Okay, I think we should go back to because you have an Ashkenaz Siddur. The last blessing in Mincha and Marav is truncated. It's artificially shortened. We who daven the Sephardi Siddur have said the same thing for all three prayers, but yours is short. I'll explain why that is afterwards. But let's go back to 116, 117.
You have Sim Shamayim for
I'm sorry?
You have Sim Shamayim for Marav too?
Gibson?
Sephardim always have Sim Shalom.
That's right.
Even Marav?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, you're only surprised because you're used to Ashkenaz, which is the minority position, I should remind you, because the whole Sephardi world and most of the Hasidic world daven say Sim Shalom. So it's minority. I mean, it's okay. It's all right. But it's a minority position because the prayers are supposed to be standardized. They're so standardized that, you know, that after Shabbos and after a holiday, we say Havdalah on a cup of wine, right? And the text of Havdalah is Mavdim and Kodesh L'chol, holy and non-holy, or L'choshech, light and darkness, Yisrael La'amim, Jewish people and the other nations, Yom HaShvi L'Sheisel Yamas, the seventh day from the 6 days of work. That we say in Havdalah, always. Even when a holiday was Tuesday, and you're making Havdalah Tuesday night, you say God distinguishes between the seventh day and the other 6 days of work. Isn't that text really relevant to Shabbos? Hey? And not to a holiday that's on Tuesday? Yeah, it is. But there's something called low plug. Don't make distinctions. And if 92% of the time you're going to say the Shabbos one, don't have an 8% out on the left field there where you say something else. It's going to be too confusing. People get mixed up. Use the same thing. So once you know that there's a principle of low plug, if you find any exceptions, the exceptions have to be justified. Why is it that the Ashkenazim don't say Sim Shalom all three times? Something better about the morning than the afternoon and the evening and some difference. Okay, maybe there is, right? But still, why should you vary it? And there is an answer to that. We'll get to that. Okay, now the first thing is this. This whole paragraph, this blessing, is all petition. We're all asking for things, peace and other things. Now that seems to go against the standard description of the Shemoneh Esrei, which we have mentioned at least 10 times, that it has three phases. The first is praise of God, the second is petition, and the third is gratitude, thanksgiving. We finished that one. That's modim. This is now another paragraph, another blessing of petition, asking for things. What's it doing at the end? If it's petitions, it belongs in the middle part with all the other petitions. An answer to that question is that Sim Shalom is a response to the priestly blessing, which is in gray at the top of the page, because in the repetition of the prayer, Shemoneh Esrei, that's where the priests give the priestly blessing, and Sim Shalom is a response to that. And one hint to that fact is that if you look at the priestly blessing, you'll see that there are 3 verses, and each verse has 2 verbs. May Hashem bless you and safeguard you. That's 2. Illuminate his countenance and be gracious. Turn his countenance and establish peace. So that's 6. Now let's see, how many things do we ask for? Well, it starts by establish peace, goodness, blessing, graciousness, kindness, and compassion, which is 6. So we ask for 6 things, parallel to the 6 verbs in the priestly blessing. Okay, but now, what is a petition doing after the priestly blessing? Why would the response to the blessing be a petition? The priestly blessing is a mitzvah. The Kohanim have this obligation to bless the congregation. They say the words, and that communicates the blessing. What would a petition be doing after that? So I don't remember who I heard this from, but I think it's one way to explain it very well. If you look back to page 99, you'll see in the middle of the page a gray box. This is something that we say in the 10 days from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. And it says, "Remember us for life, O King who desires life, and inscribe us in the book of life for your sake, O living God." Now, the book of life, what's that? Well, there's a famous Gemara, and it's elaborated in many places, that in Rosh Hashanah there are two books open, the book of life and the book of death. And people are being judged. Their performance the previous year is being evaluated. And according to some opinions, if a person is found worthy, then in Rosh Hashanah he's written into the book of life. And if he's found unworthy, then he's written into the book of death. And then the question of what happens to Yom Kippur and other explanations, but that's what they are, the book of life and the book of death. All right, now let's imagine it's Rosh Hashanah, the creator of the world, who knows everything, remembers everything, and is absolutely fair, is deciding who gets written in the book of life and who gets written in the book of death based on their past year's performance. So these words in the gray box, I'm saying them, Kosh Baruch Hu, please write me in the book of life. Well, let's see. Do I deserve that or don't I deserve that? If I deserve it, then God, being just, will write me in the book of life, even if I don't ask, because I deserve it, and justice requires it. And if I don't deserve it, if my record for the previous year is so bad that I deserve to be written in the book of death, do you think that by asking it, I'm saying to the Creator, I know what's just, but don't do what's just. Do it for me, even though it's not just. On the day of judgment, just to say, forget about justice and truth, and just write me in the book of life. Doesn't sound reasonable. So one explanation is this: yes, of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to write you in the book of life if you earned it, but you have to show that it's precious to you, that you care about it, that it's something you're invested in. That's what the petition is doing. You're asking, showing that you desire this and you depend upon this, and this is for you something that's of great value by asking for it, even though, according to the laws, it's going to be done. It's a little bit like saying thank you. Do you say thank you to the bus driver? Of course. But I want you to know, there are people who say, but he's being paid to do that. He would drive the bus even if it was empty. He's not doing it for you. He's doing it because he has a job and he wants to get paid. Yeah, that's right. And he would drive it even if I weren't there, but he benefited me. And therefore it's appropriate to say thank you. Same thing with a waiter in a restaurant or anybody who does something that you benefit from. You say thank you. So here the petition shows that I appreciate the preciousness of being written in the book of life. All right, now back on page 117. The priestly blessing is pronounced by the priests. They have a mitzvah to pronounce it. It's a blessing that Kodesh Baruch Hu gives to the Jewish people through them. But I have to show that I appreciate it, not just take it as, okay, they have no choice. They have to do this and I benefit. Good, have a nice day. No. And by the way, there are those, my Rebbe Zatzal told people to do it, after the repetition is finished, to say Yeshivat Koyach to the priests. Say Yeshivat Koyach to them. Show them that you appreciate what they're doing. Even though it's a mitzvah that they have to do. It's like saying thank you to the bus driver. So here, this petition here is a petition to show a recognition of the preciousness of that blessing. So that's why it doesn't go in the middle section, because this is specifically related to the priestly blessing. Yeah.
What's the reason that in Eretz Yisrael they do the priestly blessing every day, but like in America it's very
difficult to explain. Very difficult to explain. Some sources say They don't know why it's done that way. And by the way, there are places in America where they do it every day.
Oh, really?
Oh yes, there are Sephardim who do it every day. In fact, Rav Scheinberg used to go, when he went to New York, always daven in a certain synagogue, I think it was in Flatbush, of Sephardim, because he wanted to hear Birkas Kohanim. So it's very difficult to explain. There's nothing in the laws of it that specifically say that should be done, shouldn't be done every day. Even in Eretz Yisrael, some places do it every day, some places don't. In the Galil, there's a lower Galil and upper Galil. They have different customs about how it's done, but it's very difficult. It's not based on the halacha. Where the customs come from, I don't know, but it's not based on the halacha. It's quite striking because it's a mitzvah deraisa. That the Kohen, it's a pasuk, explicit pasuk that they should give the blessing. So I don't know. Okay, so now let's look at the elements of the blessing. So establish will seem interesting in literal Hebrew means to put something in a place, but it is used for establishing things that are abstract. Peace, goodness, blessing, graciousness, kindness, and compassion. They're all of the same piece. They're just revolving around one thing, providing for those in need. Now, for whom should this be done? Upon us and upon all your people, Israel. So I didn't stress this phraseology you have very often in the blessings. There, strictly speaking, there are three foci. There's the person who's praying, there's his local community, and then there's the whole Jewish people. So I did tell you that plural is understood as on behalf of the whole Jewish people. When it comes to himself, if he wants to express personal requests, which he should do, it's encouraged, he should do it like this. This is praying for health. Please make the Jewish people healthy, and I'm also with you, and please include me and make me healthy as one of them. It's one of the group. Like some of you know, on Shabbos morning, when there's the reading of the Torah, there's a prayer for those who are ill, and they make the prayer, and one of the things they say is, B'soch shar chol amo Yisrael, that he should be answered with health, together among all the unhealthy of the Jewish people. Always it's for the Jewish people and us as an individual person, as a member of that of the Jewish people. But there's an intermediary. There's your local community, and you have responsibilities for your local community, which take priority over other responsibilities. For example, let's suppose you get two solicitations in the mail, one from a local charity and one from a charity elsewhere. Other things being equal, you're supposed to give your money to the local charity because you have a greater responsibility for your local needs, the local needs of your community, than you do for people in other communities. So here it's broken up in the prayer into the two groups, and that you have to have in mind that your membership in the community is something which has significance and has responsibilities. Bless us, our Father, all of us, as one, with the light of your countenance. What does it mean to bless us as one?
United?
Okay, I mean, so you understand, each of us has needs. The blessings that we get are the things that were supplied to us to fulfill our needs, and different people have different needs. It means that each one's blessings aren't fulfilled, aren't, let's say, ideally fulfilled unless there's unity among the people as a whole. And that's because every Jew, like I said a moment ago, plays a double role. He is an individual person, and he also plays a role as a member in the community. So let's suppose like we said a couple of days ago, I'm asking for things that will enable me to function better. In particular, able to serve God better. Well, serving God has two dimensions. There are the specific mitzvos that are addressed to me, and then there are the mitzvos that are addressed to me to participate in the joint performances of the community. So, for example, let's say prayer. So I'm supposed to pray 3 times a day. That's one thing. I'm also supposed to pray with a minyan if I can. So that means to make a community and be part of that community in prayer. So those are two different facets. So if I'm going to ask for gifts that will enable me to perform ideally in a spiritual way, what's that? To perform ideally, I have to be able to perform ideally in both areas. So the real blessing that comes to me is going to be fulfilled in the best possible way if there is a unity, so that I can play both roles, and then the blessings to me will enable me to play both roles. That's like on the surface, but that's one thing to say. Now it says, with the light of your countenance. Now, of course, this is poetry. God doesn't have a face. I know one explanation from the Ramchal, and by the way, it's a quotation from the blessing above about the priestly blessing, so again, it's responsive to that. Events happen in the world, individual events. Then there are trends. There are events in many places that reinforce one another. And when you look at the event, not a single event, or even a single event itself, when you look at the connections of the event that you're undergoing with other events, sometimes there can be a complexion in those events. There can be an overall trend. There can be an overall quality to the event. And very similar events can have different overall quality. For example, let's take someone punishing a child for a misdeed. Well, it might depend upon who's giving the punishment. Let's say that the punishment is the teacher of the child. Let's say the child is victimizing another child, and the one giving the punishment is the father of the other child. Or let's say that the one giving the punishment is the father of the child who's being punished. Now let's say the punishment is a slap. I know you're not supposed to say that. Okay. Could be that the slap is delivered in three different ways because of the relationship of the punisher to the child. Shall I call upon my ancient crude history? There was a Broadway show, I think. I read about it. It was called, maybe it was The Sound of Music, or whatever it is. There's a subplot where there's a man who has difficulties. Maybe he was drunk, and he was uncontrolled, and he victimized his children. He beat them, and so forth and so on. And finally, he runs away, and he gets hold of himself, and he reorganizes his life, and then he comes back to the hometown where the family's living, but he can't bring himself to identify himself, and he sees his daughter on the street. I don't know how old she is when this happens, 12, 15, something like that. He walks over to her, and he gives her a slap. And he walks away, and people rush over to her. What happened? What's the matter? And she said, to me, it felt like a caress. It's a very profound moment. She felt his inner struggle. He didn't want to hit her. He didn't want to hit her. He wanted to show his love to her. It was just couldn't help it, just out of control. So she felt the inner feeling behind the hit, not just the hit. The verses say that the Kadosh Baruch Hu, when he has to punish us, punishes us the way a father punishes his child. A father, now of course there are all sorts of fathers, and there are criminals out there and psychopaths out there, but a normal father, normal parents don't want to punish their children. And the child is programmed with strategies to make it very hard for the parents, crying and begging and banging his head on the floor and holding his breath until he passes out. He's got all these strategies to make the parent feel terrible about. If it was the parent of the other child whom this child hit, the other parent wouldn't feel terrible. He wouldn't hesitate. It wouldn't move him. Wouldn't matter to him. You hit my child, you're going to get it. But to his own parent, it's going to be very different. So even though the punishment is applied, it's going to be applied in a very different way. Its complexion will be different, even though the raw mechanics of the event are going to be the same. So the things that happen to us have a complexion to them. One example of this, which I think is very striking, the fourth blessing of the benching, the blessings after the meals, which speaks of a God in the most glorious terms, his goodness, his compassion, his kindness, and his help, and his support. Right? This blessing was composed after the disaster of Beitar. The Romans murdered everyone at Beitar. Lots and lots of people, whatever the actual number of the population was, but it was a lot of people. They were all murdered. Well, why then would there be such a blessing of praise and thanksgiving and God's goodness over the so on? So the Talmud says because after they murdered everyone in the city, the Romans made a decree that they couldn't be buried. Of course, for us that's terrible, but okay, they did that to increase the pain. After a period of time, they reversed the decree and allowed them to be buried. When we went in, we saw that the bodies were perfectly preserved. They did not deteriorate at all. Look at that miracle. Look at that miracle. The bodies didn't deteriorate. Wow! God is wonderful and supportive and kind and merciful and generous and... Yeah, but they all died. What's the balance here? And one explanation is this. The fall of Beitar and the other parts of the Roman conquest and persecution were the initiation into 2,000 years of exile. That's a long time. What kind of exile will it be? What will the complexion of the exile be? So here I'm trading on a Rambam where it speaks about God's face being hidden. We're talking about the light of his countenance, right, of his face. Where God's face is hidden, Yistarti Panai. Once in the Torah is with a single verb, and another time with a double verb, Haster Astir, doubly hidden. And one explanation is this. One type of hiddenness is this. You don't know why I'm doing this. You don't know what it means. You don't know what its value is. You don't know what it contributes to. It's a mystery. That's one level of hiddenness. A double level of hiddenness is where you don't even see that I'm doing it. On the surface, it looks random. Looks that it has not directed at all. That's much worse. It's much worse. So here we are entering into 2,000 years of exile. What kind of hiddenness will it be? Will it be single hiddenness, you don't know why? Or will it be double hiddenness that you don't even know that I'm doing it? Well, if the bodies didn't deteriorate, that means it's single hiddenness, not double. Because it's coordinated together with a miracle which shows you that I'm doing it. Only my doing it could account for the fact that the bodies didn't deteriorate. That's a gigantic difference in the complexion of the event. Of course, 98% of the event is that they all died. No question about it. The bodies, yes, no, is 2%. But that 2% changes the complexion. It's a different kind of experience. So this is a little bit of what you can say about Be'or Panecha, that should bless us not only with the individual events that take place, but the constellation of events should support us. And here it's a little bit like what we said about Shema Kolenu, hear our voice, where we said, don't turn us away empty-handed. And we said that our petitions have two dimensions. One is I ask for each of the things that I need to be able to serve him better. But secondly, in addition to yes or no, getting that particular thing that will help me serve him better, there's also, don't let me feel abandoned. Give me at least something so I know that you care about me. That's not just having this thing for this specific purpose to serve you better in this way. It's just a connection, a recognition. I want to add to this because I just learned it this morning. I'm learning the Maharal with a friend of mine. He says mercy is a connection. A person is motivated to do mercy because of the feelings in his heart when he sees the other person suffering. There's a lot more behind that, but that's what he says. He says you have to know the idea of mercy is the idea of connection. And when we read that, it reminded me of something that the Kedushas Levi says, one of the great early Hasidic thinkers, philosophers. He said, when a miracle happens to a person, there are two different ways to relate to it. Let's imagine Reuven's driving his car on a mountain road, and he goes over the side of the cliff, and he starts to fall, and there's a tree there. A tree catches the car and stops its falling, and then after that comes a truck with a ladder, sees him there, and stops down, there's a ladder, and he climbs backs up, looks down in the ravine, it's 200 feet down, and he thinks, now here's two ways that he could relate to this event. I was dead. There's no question I was going to die. Tree right there. And then with the truck, that's not normal. That's not natural. Look at that. My life was saved by a miracle. Wow, a miracle. Only the Creator could do a miracle. So, thank you so much for saving my life. That's one way to look at it. Here's another way to look at it. My car went off the cliff, was caught by a tree, and there was a truck with a ladder. That's not normal. That's not just blind nature operating. That's a miracle. God showed me that He cares about me. God showed me that He's running my life. Wow. Thank you for revealing yourself to me. Now let's see, what happened? Oh, yes. I was falling over the cliff. I could have died. Oh, wow, look at that. He saved my life. Thanks for saving my life. Where's the emphasis? Is the emphasis on saving my life, or is the emphasis on the fact that He openly communicated with me? What is the most precious element to me? So here, the idea is the precious element is the fact that He's communicating to me. He shows Himself to me in the events that happen by giving them a complexion where I feel His presence in the events. That itself becomes the crucial dimension. Okay? All right, now it goes on. Bless us with the light of your countenance. 4. With the light of your countenance you gave us, Hashem, our God. Now let's be careful about these things that He gave us. He gave us the Torah of life. Okay, right? The Torah gives us our life, and He gave us that Torah. He gave us a love of kindness. That's an element of character. That's not an object, not a thing. It's a gift of having an element of character. And He gave us righteousness also. That's a quality of character. Blessing isn't the quality of a character. It's usually the word blessing refers to multiplying resources in a way that's beyond the natural. Compassion, that's mercy, yes. He treats us with compassion. And life and peace as a condition. But part of what we are thankful for, what we're grateful for, and what we recognize is that He gave us gifts of character. That's very important to understand. Rav Dessler says, he has a whole essay on it. I'm just going to take the headlines because I want to comment on it. That there are two ultimate character traits, and the others are spin-offs. One is the character trait of giving, and the other is the character trait of taking. Just be careful, not receiving, taking. And he said, the root of all good is giving, the root of all evil is taking. And the giving is in us as an expression of the Tzelem Elokim, the form of the Creator that's planted within us, with which we were created. Because what is the Creator doing all the time? Giving. All He's doing is giving. That's all. Everything that happens is a gift. A way to give the gift, a way to promote the gift, a way to improve the gift. The only motivation from above is giving. That's why I said the world is created with loving kindness. Maybe I didn't say it explicitly or often enough, but it's not only is created and then it goes to sleep. All of Hashem's activity is giving. By the way, even Maimonides says this, word for word in the guide. So, if we have in us a love of kindness, that's His expression in us. So that when we act on that love of kindness, We're acting on that stamp of his nature that's in us as well. And he says that I would say normal people, healthy people, find that they want to give, and that when they're frustrated in giving, they feel something is being denied them, something is being cut out from them. For example, somebody gives you a birthday present. What do you want to do? You want to know when his birthday is, right? Because if he gave you a present, you're not a sink for charity. It's not as if you're begging. No, he showed his appreciation for you. You want to show your appreciation for him. Somebody does something for you that's kind, and he says, "Don't thank me." Are you perfectly comfortable with that? Why not? Why shouldn't I thank you? What's the point of saying thank you? Because usually when A says thank you to B, that makes B feel good. It means B understands that A appreciated what he did, and A then accomplished his goal in benefiting B. So B is paying it back by saying thank you. If you're told don't say thank you. Many people have children, maybe not all, because you can't fit all people into any one basket, but many people have children because they know there's an opportunity to give. This child will be totally dependent upon me. And that's the strongest possible obligation to give. And I want to be in that obligation because I want to be able to give. Another illustration, I once had to write an article about self-esteem. So I did a little research, looking up resources all over the world. To make a long story short, what I think is maybe the most important pillar of self-esteem is doing for others. Doing for others. I didn't see that anywhere. Everywhere where I looked was, you want to build someone's self-esteem, don't criticize him, don't belittle him, don't make him feel bad, don't give him tasks that are too hard for him to accomplish, only the ones that he can accomplish. Don't criticize him if he fails, because that pulls him down. No. That's not a way to build self-confidence. The way to build self-esteem is to convince the person that he's worthy, that he's valuable, that he's important. Well, you're only valuable if you're valuable to somebody else. You're only important if you're important to somebody else. And when people are put in a position where they are needed by others, and they benefit others, even if the others don't say thank you, they feel worthy. Because let's say a person is in a situation where he can't say thank you, or where you need to be anonymous in order to do what you need to do. That doesn't mean you think it was a waste of time. You look at him and say, he's falling. And I interacted with him for 6 weeks, and now he's walking straight. He doesn't know I did it, but I know I did it. I know his life is better because of me. So then I'm important, because I made somebody else's life better. That's because the nesina, the potential for giving, the orientation to giving is built into the person, because that's the stamp of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence in him. It's the stamp of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's nature in him, is the giving. So that's what it means here. He gave us a love of kindness. He put that in our nature. Yeah.
Is that the reason that it's so much easier to give than it is to receive?
In certain respects, although there's an ego. Well, okay, you're right, because when you're giving, now it becomes a little more subtle, a little more tricky. When you're giving, you're building up your self-esteem, and that can be thought of as building up your ego. Because I'm important because I'm giving. I had a very sad interaction with someone in the United States. I was in a certain city giving shiurim, and I got a message that a psychiatrist wanted to speak to me. So already, why does a psychiatrist want to speak to a rabbi? Come on, Those guys think they know everything, and they undercut everything by saying you did it only because of. But he asked for a meeting, so I gave him a meeting. This is what he told me. He said, Rabbi, I have a problem. I've been in 5 relationships, and each one ended when the other person left me. Now listen, Rabbi, I have a lot of money, and I'm a very successful professional, and I'm very generous. I'm generous with my money, with my time, with my concern, and when I'm with somebody, so I because I'm a psychologist, a psychiatrist, I can see a lot about their character, and I make sure that everything, their needs are satisfied, that their desires, that they're inspired, that they're happy, and yet everyone left me. Why is that? I said to him, well, what do they do for you? And he said, Rabbi, I'm a giver, not a taker. No, I give. So I said, well, that's the answer. They felt like fifth wheels. They felt like they're totally unimportant. They felt like they have no value because they weren't doing anything for you. He couldn't hear me. A psychiatrist, he couldn't hear me. He couldn't hear what I was talking about. He rejected what I said, and he just walked off. I thought, wow. That's how being a certain type of professional can spoil your insight. When you hear it, isn't it obvious to you? Here's another example. You're considering a relationship and you're considering getting married. You have your list of your wish list. Everybody has a wish list. This I learned from my first wife. You have your wish list, and now you meet somebody who has every element on your wish list, everything that you could possibly desire in a mate, and doesn't need you for anything. You think you're going to be happy? I don't think you're going to be happy. They used to say in an older style of English, everyone needs to be needed. That's right. That's very important. Everyone needs to be needed. One of the things so my first wife said, when you make out your list looking for someone to marry, you have to have what you want the other person to have, and then you want to have a list of what you have to give, what you can support, what you can reinforce, and see that the other person can use the things that you have to give. Each person should have a double list, a wish list and a give list. And then, if your wish list matches her give list, and your give list matches her wish list, then you have a reasonable match. But if not, if they don't need you for anything, then you're going to be very, very frustrated. So this idea of giving, yes, if you refuse to receive from the other person, you're refusing the other person the recognition that makes that person feel worthy. So yes, that's in a certain. But then Rav Dessler says, see, I'll finish off because Rav Dessler says the root of all goodness is giving, the root of all evil is taking, and the ideal world is a world in which everyone is giving. So he says himself, you imagine that's difficult, right? Because if you're giving, the other guy's taking, right? Well, not necessarily. Now we'll go back to what I said 3.5 minutes ago. There's a difference between taking and receiving. And what's the difference? Well, when someone offers me something, I can ask myself, if I receive it from him, does he get anything out of it? And if he does, then my receiving it is also a giving to him. And then we're both giving to each other. And that's the ideal world. So for example, let's suppose I want to build someone's self-esteem. And I'm scheduled to take a trip to Italy, and I know this person has spent time in Italy. So I go to him and I say, listen, I'm taking a trip to Italy. Could you tell me about it, what it's like there, and what customs there are there, and what things to do and not to do, and what social mores are there to be careful about? And he tells me, and he's happy to tell me, right? Okay. On one level, he gave me information, valuable information, so he's giving to me, right? Now let's take one step up. This I learned from Deborah Tannen. What's implied when I ask him for information? Well, number one, what's implied is that he has the information. Number two, that he understands it. Number two, that he can communicate it clearly. Number three, that he's kind enough, up to four, that he's kind enough and considerate enough to spend time sharing it with me. Aren't the implications of my asking him very supportive of him? Very respectful? Don't I communicate to him that I have a high opinion of him when I ask him these things? And doesn't he get something out of that? Doesn't he get reinforcement out of that? Now, it might be that I could get all the information I need about Italy from a travel book. I could have done that. I have it on my shelf. But I'm building him when I ask him for it. So my receiving the information from him is my act of building him. And both of us are giving to each other. That's the difference between receiving and taking. Receiving can be precious, taking not. And especially in a marriage relationship, there has to be a balance between giving and receiving. And that's what that poor psychiatrist didn't understand. He didn't understand that. Yeah, you want to say something?
What's the reason that sometimes it's so hard to take the compliment and really believe it about yourself, but it's so much easier to give the compliment?
That's a wonderful story about Rabbi Shmelka about that. Rabbi Shmelka was Rav in Nikolsburg, and he was first invited there for a trial. And he traveled, and he got there, and they put him up at a hotel, and they said, rest for a while, we'll come back and take you to the, give us shir and answer questions, so on and so on. So after a few hours, the two representatives of the city came to the hotel. They came to his door, about to knock on the door, when they heard his voice inside. They heard him saying, the great, great scholar Reb Shmelka, the great saint tzaddik Reb Shmelka. What? And he's going on and on. I didn't know what to do. Like, what's going on? Finally, it's time to go. So they knock on the door, and he comes to the door and he says, okay, I'm ready to go. They said, listen, we have to ask you. I'm sorry. We overheard you. And what was going on there? You're talking to yourself, about yourself, how great you are, and so forth and so on. So he said, I'll tell you. There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. It says, Yehi chavod chavercha chaviv alecha kishaloch. Let your friend's honor be as dear to you as your own. Normally, one way of understanding it is that treat people with respect and be careful about their honor, just as you would want them to be careful about your own. That's certainly one way to read the Mishnah. But there's another way to read the Mishnah. Let your friend's honor, meaning the honor your friends give to you, let that honor be as precious to you as the honor you would give yourself. He said, when I say the great scholar Rabbi Shmelka, I know better. I know better. I know what my weaknesses are. I know what my failures are. So I know those words are hollow. So I recite my own praises, knowing they're hollow, and then use that as my model for listening to the other guy's praises of me. Just as my own praises of myself are worthless to me, because I know the truth, so I should be able to disregard the praises that come from other people. One reason that it's hard to take praise from others, two reasons or three reasons, but one reason is that often they exaggerate, and you know they're exaggerating. It's just embarrassing. There's another reason, because it's very precious if a person will tell you your faults. And our relationships, our friendships are based usually on mutual praise. I'll give you an illustration. Did you ever hear or experience where you say, this person, if only this person knew how he looks when he does that, he would never do it. If he only knew the impression that he was making, he would never do it. So why does he do it? Because he doesn't know how it looks, doesn't know what impression it's making. And why doesn't he know? Doesn't he have friends? Yeah, he has friends, but they won't tell him. Why won't they tell him? He's hurting himself. He's shooting himself in the foot regularly. You're a friend of his? Why don't you tell him? Save him. Because I don't know how he'll take it, and it's who knows what it'll be. So our friendships are based on mutual flattery, and that's number one, misleading and deleterious. But number two, it leaves out this precious element of telling a person his faults. So there's a lot there that's not ideal. Those are the reasons. There's some of the reasons why it's hard to take another person's praise and flattery. A third reason is, especially if it's in public, if he praises me that way, that's what I have to live up to. Oh, and maybe if he exaggerates and I think I can't bear that burden, I can't do that, then I'm in a really bad situation. What shall I do? Contradict him and say, no, I'm terrible? And if I don't do that, then I've got to live up to it, and that's very difficult. So these are some of the elements in when somebody else praises you that make it less than ideal. The Torah has a rule: miktzas shvacho b'fanav. When God speaks to Noach, he only says part of what the verse describes his virtues to be. He only says part of it. And the way God dealt with Noah is the way we're supposed to deal with people also. Don't say his whole praise in front of him. So that's part of the idea. Now, how do we get into this? I forget how we got into this.
That's my fault.
Yeah, you asked the question. Okay, that's fine. I was trying to get back to the text.
Yeah, it's a good question, though.
Sorry?
Oh, I said it was a good question.
Yeah, definitely good question. Okay, so now the last words in the blessing are that it should be good to bless your people Israel with your peace. I may have mentioned this before, but this is really crucial to keep in mind. Peace, shalom. Peace in the English and shalom in Hebrew are not the same concept at all. We, Baruch Hashem, have a ceasefire in Lebanon. That's sort of like peace, at least you're not shooting at each other. That's not shalom. Not near to shalom. The word shalom comes from a root which means completeness. Completeness in the sense of nothing's missing. A lot is missing between us and Lebanon. A lot. Just no bullets are flying. No bombs are dropping. That's not making up for all the losses in the relationship with Lebanon and, of course, with the Hezbollah. So what here we're asking for is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bless us with a kind of shleimus, a type of completion. Again, learning the Maharal now, and he has a theme that he's emphasizing over and over again. I'll give you an example. I think you can imagine that in the slums of Buenos Aires, there are people, young people, let's say teenagers, early 20s, with tremendous capabilities. If they would have the right education, right inspiration, they could become great violinists or great physicists or great artists, or they have a lot of talent. But because they're living in a slum and they don't have the resources and they don't have the inspiration, all those talents don't get developed. Isn't that a shame? Isn't that a shame? A person has outstanding talents which could make him a very superior contributor to the world, and those talents never get realized. One element in shleimus is that there aren't any unrealized capabilities. Aren't any unrealized capabilities. Because shleimus means you're not lacking anything. And if you have an unrealized capability, what you're lacking is the gift of realizing that capability, which you have, and you have the capacity for. And by the way, I'm just putting things on record now. There's a statement in the Ramchal, in the Derech Das Tunas, which I've quoted many times, and I'm sort of always a little off base, like I don't exactly understand where it's coming from. It's useful as an answer to a lot of questions, but I don't quite have it solid. And what he says is, Derech HaTov L'Heitiv. God is good, and it's the way of the good to do good. Meaning, having goodness as an inner quality is not yet perfect. Perfection would require expressing the quality in action. So this is the idea of where the creation comes from. Kodesh Baruch Hu has the quality of goodness, and goodness naturally expresses itself in action. And that would mean there has to be a recipient for the goodness to benefit, and that's why he created the world, so there'll be recipients that he can benefit. That's the standard structure. But this idea of it's the way of the good to express itself by giving, okay, I treated it like an axiom, he said it and it answers these questions. But now with the Maharal, I think I have a much deeper understanding. Let's suppose that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had the quality of goodness and it weren't expressed. Then it would be a potentiality which is unrealized. That's not whole. An unrealized potentiality isn't doing what its character needs to be done. Then you couldn't call him perfect if he had an unrealized potentiality. The Maharal gave me, and by the way, Maharal is considered to be the source of the vast majority of wisdom after him. He was a very great Kabbalist, although he didn't write in explicit Kabbalistic categories a lot, but sometimes he does, a few times he does. And philosophical ideas and linguistic. and textual ideas is just so when you see something, let's say someone who's 100 years later, 150 years later, and resonates with the Mara, it could be that he learned it there. That's what he's expressing. But so this idea of unrealized potentialities is part of what we're asking for when we say, bless us with your shleimus, with your perfection, that the capacities that we have should become realized. Okay? All right, there's a lot more to do. We just finished the official Shemoneh Esrei. There's the long prayer after the Shemoneh Esrei, which we're going to talk about, and we'll talk about the nature of blessings. Today's Wednesday. Okay, so we'll start that tomorrow, Hashem.